our generations, they're gone, you know. In my age, I don't know how many more years I have to live, but somebody has to tell the truth, because most of the time, people they think it's make up stories. Never, Holocaust never happened, and I was there, and I want to tell the truth. I never talked before, but now I'm since in my age, somebody has to talk about it, and I decide, you know, to tell my story.
And what do you think is the most important thing for people today to know?
Well, they should know it happened, you know, and still today, people they are against everybody, you know, especially the Jews. Always, we, they're always against us, you know, whatever happened, everything is us. So the reason I say I have to say something because I was there, yeah.
And when I say to you, this is celebrating the
The
70th
yes.
liberation.
Yeah, the
day of
liberation of
70 years
Auschwitz,
since
yes.
liberation.
Yes.
What does that mean to you?
But it means a lot. It means at least, you know, all these people, 6 million people died. And you know, if remember, you know, my family, I lost all my family that time when we came, the Germans came in Greece, they took all my family. And when I came back, the liberation, I came by myself. I was so young and I didn't even have any experience of anything. But we married, I married, I'm still here. Yeah.
And what was that like for you?
It was not easy. It was not easy, you know. But like I say, you know, I married.
Did you think you would still be talking about it 70
Oh, yes.
years later?
Yes. Well, for a long, long time, I never talk about because for one reason or the other, especially, you know, when I start having children, I don't want to talk about. I just want my children not to be afraid, you know. So, but after they start teaching in schools about the Holocaust, you know, my grandchildren start asking questions. They want to know about my story. Then I start talking about, yeah. I already did.
How hard was that?
It was very hard. I mean, even today, even when I talk today, everything comes back. Like I say, you try to forget. There's no way you can forget. But everything comes back, you know. The memories and whatever happened, you know, and sometimes you wonder why. You know, we didn't do anything, you know, but just because of religion. It was, I mean, so many people died for what? Because we were Jewish, that's all.
And can you share with us a couple of your experiences there, the most poignant experiences?
Well, in the camp?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. What do you want to know?
Well, I mean, what was it like to go in there at the beginning? Did you know?
Well, like I said at the beginning, we didn't even expect anything like that. So, especially me, I was transport in Birkenau. First Birkenau, when with all my family. So then they separate us, my family, like my father went with my brother, my mother went with my sister, and me and my sister together. And they separate us, so the teenagers for work, and the other ones for the crematorium, you know what I'm saying? So they separate right away. And we didn't even know we're not going to see them again, but it happened. That day was the end. We didn't even say goodbye or nothing because we didn't know. We thought for sure we're going to see again, but this didn't happen. No, yeah.
And it seemed like it happened kind of slowly. First there were the ghettos, and
Yes,
then taken
yes.
to the camps, and then separated, and then, you know, so what was that like as you were going through that? Because you didn't know what was happening.
No, we didn't know nothing about. We didn't know, like I said, as soon as we came in, you know, in the camp, the first thing you did, take your clothes off, take your jewelry out, and they start shaving us. They shave on the hair, and they shave us all over, and they separate us. And then again, the teenagers, they separate us for work, and the other ones, they send it to the crematorium. But we didn't even know. Nothing like that will happen. Who knows? We didn't know. But when we came, I mean, the Greeks, we came late. The Polish people, they were there already for a couple of years in Birkenau. And the Polish people, they were there, and they told us, I mean, we didn't even speak the language, but we knew Hebrew a little bit, and we spoke a little bit Hebrew. And they told us, this is it, this is the end. You're not going to see your mother, your father, nobody. This is the end. You see that there at the crematorium? That's what everybody's. We didn't even know, what was going to happen. That's what they told us. They knew because they were there before us. And as we found out, you have to take care of yourself, and then you have to do what I tell you to do. And we start living, maybe we live today, maybe we'll die tomorrow. You never know about the Germans, If they decide today, they're going to send to the crematorium, there's no excuses or nothing, they just make the transport and send you there. But this is the way it was.
I can't imagine how scary that was.
Well, it was scary, but like I said, you live for the moment. You never know if in 5 minutes from now, you're still going to be alive or you're going to still be there, Nobody knew.
So fast forwarding to the liberation, how long were you in the camp?
Well, I was 2 years.
And so for the liberation, you were part of the march?
Yes, I was, yeah.
So what was that day like, if you can remember?
Oh, wow. Well, the liberation was something, like I say, at the end of from Auschwitz, they sent us to Bergen-Belsen. Bergen-Belsen was the camp. We didn't have to work. We didn't have to do nothing. We just sit there. It was the end of the war, 1944, because we were liberated in 1945. It was the end of it. We didn't have to do anything. So we was there waiting for any minute what will happen. So when we found out, and we saw the Germans, they was wearing the white sleeves, and we know they was losing it. And we find out that the British, they're coming. So when we find out the liberation was, and the good enough, they won. And the end of when we was there in Bergen-Belsen, that's what they were saying. It was true, I don't know, but they had put some kind of poison in the soup. They were supposed to give us some lunch. It was about 12 o'clock when we was liberated. Then somebody report to the British. They said, don't give it to them because they are kind of poisoned there. And they didn't do it. They didn't do it. So sure enough, they want to decide to poison all of us and died right there. But we was liberated by the British. But when the British came, it was so much fun. I mean, God, we are free. And they start giving us chocolates and then all that. And people would start eating. After so many days we didn't eat, we start eating all the chocolates and all that and start getting sick. They start getting sick and they start having diarrhea, And the people that were stunned died, for just after the liberation, just because of that, But it was something, nobody could believe we was liberated. After so many years, we was free, yeah.
So how did you get to Cincinnati?
Well, what happened was that time, they concentrate us, all the Greeks, together. They say, you want to go back to Greece, you want to go back to Israel, or you want to go to the United States. But most of us, we was hoping maybe we'll find some relatives back in Greece. We decided to go back to Greece. So one transport, we went back to Greece, and then we found out there was nobody left. It was just, from my family, I was just the only one back, and my friend the same way. Just one from the family. We was about 60,000, 70,000 from the Greeks that time. We only came back by 1,000. Yeah. So they're all teenagers, and we had no jobs, we had nothing. But the Jewish community, they took care of us. They gave us something to eat, they gave us something like a bed or a mattress or something, to sleep on, because we had no job, we had no money. But they took care of us. And then they decided, after I met my husband in the camp, a liberation, yeah. But then we met back in Greece. I met Sam back in Greece, and we decided, I have nobody, We got married, but it was nothing, no wedding, no nothing. We just got married by the rabbi, that's it, And then I have 2 babies, 2 children. And I came in the United States again the Jewish Family Service. They help us to come here in Cincinnati. And I'm still here.
And how long have you been in Cincinnati?
Well, I came 1950. I'm still here.
And how old are you, if I can ask?
Well, now,
Yes.
90.
90? Wow.
Yes, I made it.
I would never have guessed.
Yeah, I made it.
Well, tell me why you wanted to be part of this exhibit. Why you wanted to be part of the exhibit.
Well, I believe very strongly that the time has come for us survivors to fade away, and we have to keep the story alive, because there is plenty of hate and prejudice with us. And what we have experienced during the Holocaust was the consequence of hate and prejudice. And it never should happen anywhere in the world, in particular not in America.
And I think, what do you want people, you know, especially children who are going to see this exhibit, to learn, to take away from it?
Well, what I would like for them to know, because what happened to me, I was a child. It happened to me when I was their age. And it started for me in 1933, 7 years old, when the Nazis took power in Germany legally on the 30th of January, and within weeks we saw brown shirts in front of Jewish stores chasing away any customer. And the 1934 school year, starting then, no Jewish child was allowed to go to school, in public schools. So I come from a very small town in Germany. We were about 220 Jewish people in the city. We were 22 Jewish kids, and they formed a parochial school. And the school was not located in a school building, but it was located on the outskirts of the city in a leftover World War I military barrack. We walked to school. We would pass a playground, we would pass a restaurant, a movie house, park entrance, and all these places would have signs on: Jews and dogs prohibited, Jews stay out, Jews in the gutter, and many other words I don't want to mention here. That's one reason I want young kids, not younger than maybe 10 years old, but I want them to know what can happen even to kids.
And I think that's important, because did you think that you would ever be talking about this 70 years after liberation?
Well, yes and no, because I live in Cincinnati for 67 years now. And back in the 70s, an article appeared in the Cincinnati Enquirer, written by the then president of the German American Citizen League from the West Side, stating that the diary of Anne Frank is a hoax and the Holocaust never happened. And at the same time, a local rabbi, chief rabbi from Weiss Temple, gave a course on, I don't really know what course it was. He wanted me to come to his class, and I told him no way. But when I saw this article, I had to speak up, because again, stand up against hate and prejudice, even if it does not affect you. That is my motto, and it was coined by my grandson.
And I think, how hard is it for you to talk about it?
If I do it in English, I'm a different person. Arriving in Cincinnati in '49, my wife, late wife, and myself, we made it our business to change to be Americans as much as we could. The accent never got away, by the way. But I think in English, I live in English, and unfortunately, I never allowed my kids to learn German, which for other reasons it was not a good decision. And I think I could not do it in the German language. Then it would hit too hard.
It would be too close to home if you spoke German and talked
Yeah.
about it. Is it still pretty close to home? I mean, when you think of it and talk about it and share all these stories?
Well, let me say this to you. When I was notified that the Jews left in this small town, including my parents and younger brother, were ready to be transported out to the ghetto in Riga. I had left and joined Zionist Jewish youth organization to be trained to go as pioneers to Palestine. That was the year 1940. And when the deportation started from that part of the world, it was 1941, and we already were transferred into a forced labor camp. I applied to go home, which was granted. Coming home, asked for to be sent out with him, was denied. And I said goodbye to my parents and brother in the first week in December of 1941. Never to see him or ever to hear him again. So I want to be sure that the future generation, particularly here in America, know what responsibility they have to see to it, to stand up against hate and prejudice.
What is it like for you to see some of these artifacts?
It's artifacts. It's sanitized. The real thing cannot be shown. Now, let me also say one thing to you. After I had already had experienced 1933 to 1945, when the Death March started in January of 1945, the 18th of January, we marched from Auschwitz some 50 miles away to Gleiwitz. There we slept one night at a local satellite camp. And the next day we were marched through the city to the railway station, and the Germans saw us. They had drawn the curtains. They didn't want to see it. They didn't want to know. And we were packed in open coal cars. And the train took off. But for one reason or the other, we were unloaded the next day, had to form a column and started marching towards the Czech Republic with the ultimate goal to reach a concentration camp in Germany. And as we marched through dense woods, we heard shooting ahead of us. And one of my friends said to me, "Let me go forward to see what's going on." And he came back and he said, "Don't worry about it, they're not liquidating us." And at that time, visualize marching through dense woods and wending ways. Instinctively, I ran into the woods. And in the woods, I met two other prisoners. And we were hiding away for several days, and we heard the front rolling, coming close, rolled over us, and we got behind the Soviet lines. When we knew we were behind the lines, we worked our way to the edge of the woods, and we saw a lone farmhouse. We approached the farmhouse, and we heard English spoke. And we didn't understand a word. But then BBC London, the British Broadcasting, had newscasts, and every 15 minutes they changed different language. And when it came to German, they announced that the Soviets had announced that they had found Auschwitz. Now we know legally that was on the 27th of January. So I give for the news to spread 2 days later, so I'm assuming, it's an assumption, that it was the 29th of January. So when we are in 29th of January at the Freedom Center, it will be an eerie feeling that's exactly 7 years later. What was really unique, one of us always was on the second floor to look out because we were afraid the Germans would be come back. And my duty was in the second or third day, and I saw a tank in a hurry, full speed, going from left to right. I was an expert on tanks, so I didn't know who he was. Doesn't take long, another tank comes, and that sucker stops. The turret goes around, the gun aimed at that farmhouse. And then the lid opened up, head comes out with a red star. So we go out, hands up, striped uniform, no hair, the number, and he waved on one of the units who had liberated Auschwitz. Now we had one training. We were instructed. We used two words. Amcho, which is Hebrew for our people, and Yivrea is Russian for Jewish. And we approached it and said, Amcho, Yivrea. And the guy turned around in perfect Yiddish. "Did you see that tank?" And we asked him, how we get away from the front, and that's how we walked away.
What was it like to be free?
Well, it took several days not to have the feeling that a gun was behind you. But then we had no choice. January, bitter cold, marching, the three of us, away from the front, and it was exactly at the border, then border of Germany and Poland. Gleiwitz actually is the city where World War II started as a radio station. And we come to a point where two signs were. To the left, to Katowice, which was the Polish side, and to the right, Gleiwitz was the German side. And one fella, both were much older than I am, they were, could be almost my father, one of them, a son my age. Let's go to Gleiwitz and let's see, I used to be a traveling salesman, maybe I find a customer. And we got into Gleiwitz. When we were prisoners, the Germans didn't want to know anything. But now we came back, we couldn't walk the street. Every German stopped us to say, oh, you can stay with us. We didn't know for nothing. So here we're in front of the Soviet headquarters, and we wanted to talk to somebody. Maybe they made some arrangements. You couldn't talk to nobody. They were stone drunk. And here came two Jewish women, sisters. One was married to a German, had converted to whatever religion it was, and she had taken in her sister and was hiding her sister for several days behind the piano in her house. And she, the first question asked, are you Jews? Yes. Do you know my husband? You know my brother? No. And they sent us to a place, there were about a dozen mixed marriages where the children were raised Jewish. And as long the Aryan part, the converted part, even so the religion didn't mean anything, it was the blood. They protect them, and when they found out the kids would be deported, they hide them with the family. So we got there, and the spokesperson for that group was a lawyer, and I asked him, you know, way back in 1940, when I was trained to be a pioneer to go to Palestine, one of the girls from this city here trained with me, and I gave $100 cover. What happened to her? Oh, he said, she lives next door with your mother. Her mother also was Jewish by choice. And I knocked on the door, stayed. Oh, you stay with us. And 90 pounds, cough, and she went upstairs to another family who the daughter was a nurse. And the nurse came down, took whatever a nurse does. Well, that nurse later on turned to be my wife for 67 years. She didn't let me loose.
She found you and would never let you go, huh?
She didn't let me loose. Then when the war was over, we had to wait, it was not January, late or early February. The war was over in May, and that turned all Polish, so we had orders to return to country of origin. So we went back to Berlin. No, I'm not a native, neither was she, but we were the first Jewish wedding in Berlin after the war.
Wow.
And there I got involved in Berlin. If you may remember or heard about the Exodus story, where in Holland was stationed the Jewish brigade, Jews out of Palestine, part of the British Army, but with British officers. And they had agents going into Eastern Europe, particularly Poland, where, to the credit of the Poles, they saved a lot of Jewish kids when they took them into their own. And also survivors who went back to Poland. And then in late 45 or early 46, in the city of Kielce, 35 survivors were killed by Poles when they wanted their property back. So here was the underground, the northern route through Berlin and the southern route through Vienna, which created the Exodus story in South America. And I was involved there to take care of the people as they were in trucks coming through, all illegal with double bottoms. And then my wife was a nurse in the same place, in Berlin, and we received the people, kept them 1 or 2 nights, depends, shipped them from the French sector to the American sector to the American zone, which of course, again, eventually many of this lined up in Cyprus. And then we heard that the United States Congress have passed a law for displaced persons to come to America, and we applied, and we were accepted. But we couldn't get out of Berlin because for the political situation between East and West, the blockade and whatever. And then in '49, in July, we went with a transport out of Berlin to Bremen, traveled on the traveled on a World War II U.S. naval troop transport, 4 cabins, 250 each, for 10 days on the ocean. And when that ship sailed into New York on the 7th of August, very early in '49, and the Statue of Liberty came out, that could give you a feeling, now you have arrived in a country, have left the blood-soaked earth of Germany behind you, and then we were sent to Cincinnati and arrived here with a wife, a baby, and a suitcase, and $5.
And stayed here ever since.
I'm here ever since.
May I
And
ask
I'm
how
very
old-
proud to say I'm probably better Cincinnati citizen than most of the native Cincinnatians, because I know east, west, north, and south.
And may I ask how old you are now?
17.
39.
89 is 17.
89.
I'm going to be 90 next month.
90 next month.
On my birthday is always a holiday. 22nd of February,
22nd of February.
Washington's birthday.
Yep.